Hello students, welcome back to another session of the Analyst for 18 July 2023. Here we will be discussing the most important insights from today's the Indian Express and the Hindu. Now before I begin this session, let me tell you in the description you can find out the handouts related to the discussion of this session. It will be very fruitful for you if you go through those handouts and you can scribble your own notes if you find any discussion that is more important from this discussion. So with this, let us start with the news that we'll be discussing today. The first article is with respect to the National Multidimensional Poverty Index, which is released by Niti Aayog, and this will be looking at the various insights of multidimensional poverty, which we'll be looking at in the later slides. Next is about the BIMSTEC meeting of foreign ministers, which was recently concluded in Bangkok. The next article is about the first anniversary of James Webb Space Telescope, and we will be looking at various marvels or the achievements of the James Webb Space Telescope. The next article is with respect to Project Cheetah, which is in news often due to the sad deaths that we are witnessing of the cheetahs that were translocated to India. We'll be looking at some of the report cards. Finally, we will be concluding the session with the new norms which have been announced by the Supreme Court for senior advocates. With this, let us start the very first article. This article is with respect to the Niti Aayog report, which has said that India has so far lifted 13.5 crore people out of poverty, right? And this is very important for GS2 and GS3, where we have terms from the syllabus such as poverty, human resources, and inclusive growth. It is very imperative to again look at a previous year question that came in 2020 with respect to multidimensional poverty index. The question says the incidence, a very important term, and intensity of poverty are more important in determining poverty based on income alone. So this statement is telling that poverty is not only based on your income levels. The incidence or the number of poor people and how poor or how much they actually are deprived, that is the main determinant of poverty. So in this context, analyze the latest United Nations Multidimensional Poverty Index report. So this came in 2020. So let us keep in mind that such questions can come in mains if it is in the news. Now it is in the news. Why? Because the Niti Aayog released a report as of yesterday related to Multidimensional Poverty Index. Now before that, we have already briefly discussed that poverty is not only about income. Poverty is not only about consumption out of your income. It is a determinant of various factors. Income is definitely a factor, but not the only factor. Your consumption of a basket of commodities, for example, you are purchasing daily necessary items, for example, groceries, rice, wheat, hair comb. You are buying various amount of necessary items. You are also buying amount of luxury items. So poor people will be definitely having low consumption, low incomes, but not only these two. It also depends on the dimension of poverty at large. Now, with respect to this, there is a 2030 agenda for sustainable development which was agreed upon in the 2015 Paris Agreement, wherein the world gave in effect to the various sustainable development goals. There are a total of around 17 development goals, and it is very important for us, to know all of these 17 goals and use these goals as a part of our conclusions in mains answers. But that is a different thing. The 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development came up with 17 sustainable development goals, such as to eradicate poverty, hunger, ensure universal education, sanitation. These are 17 parameters. the first parameter or the first goal is with respect to elimination of poverty. So, especially the motto behind SDGs are to leaving no one behind. Leave no single person behind in any particular dimension. That particular dimension can be poverty, education, access to various public services, clean environment, and various other things. It is just to leave no one behind. And with this concept only, the goal 1.2 is telling that we must be reducing at least by half the proportion of men, women and children of all the ages living in poverty in all its dimensions. So, it is appreciating the fact that poverty is not solely about income, consumption, it is about various other dimensions. What are the dimensions? Let us see gradually. Before coming to the dimensions, let me tell you two very important parameters of poverty. First is the head count ratio. Let us rename it at H, because we will be needing this later. Now H will be telling you how many are there actually in quantitative number of poor people. Say for example, a nation can have around say 1 crore poor people, 2 crore, 100 crore, around like this, right? So this is about the number of poor, correct? Now next is about the intensity, or how intense, how profound is the poverty levels. Let us denote by A, and this actually refers to how poor, because a person can be poor, a person can be just above the poverty line, a person can be below the poverty line or much below than the poverty line, a person can be just poor, severely poor, too much poor, like this, right? So we have to calculate how much poor. Then in this direction only, according to the Alker-Foster methodology, this is a prominent methodology to calculate poverty at large. So according to this method, the global multidimensional poverty index, which is formed by the UNDP and the OPHI, Oxford Poverty Human Index, right? So these are the two agencies which have come out with the global multidimensional poverty index with respect to Alker-Foster methodology. This is measuring the poverty index by calculating H into A, or it is multiplying the head count ratio into the intensive amount of poor people in the world. Accordingly, a person will be called multidimensionally poor if their deprivation score, or this total value of the calculation, comes to be around or less than 33.33%. Now, accordingly, our Niti Aayog also comes out with a national multidimensional index. Now, what are these 33.33 actually consisting of? This consists of dimensions that we discussed in the beginning. These are the dimensions of poverty. Now, in which dimensions, apart from income, apart from consumption? The dimensions are health, education, and standard of living. The National Multidimensional Poverty Index is actually published by the Niti Aayog that we just saw the news article of. So, Niti Aayog actually released this. And Niti Aayog used the data of both NFHS 4, that is from the data of 2015-16, and NFHS 5, that is again from 2019 to 21. So we have the MPI results for this amount of range. Now what are the dimensions? The dimensions are health, education and standard of living. Out of this we have further sub-dimensions. Sub-dimensions of health are nutrition, child and adolescent mortality and maternal health. So these are purely dedicated to health dimensions. Next, educational dimensions are of years of schooling and school attendance. Standard of living is very important because this is where we are actually measuring the intensity of poverty at large. Here, cooking fuel, sanitation, drinking water, household, electricity, assets, and finally bank account will be taken into consideration. That means if a person is lacking in at least any one of the dimensions, that person will be having their deprivability score of around 33%.33. They will be seeing the scores dip if they are missing out any of these dimensions. So we can tell that these persons will be multidimensionally poor if they lack in such dimensions at large. Now, some very brief highlights from the reports we can provide is that, there have been a steep decline in the poverty headcount ratio, or actually the number of poor people. As we can see, at around 15% we have MPI poor in India, or multidimensional poor in India. So it has actually declined from a high of around 25% in 2015-16. So this is a good news. So this is again a data that you can capture for your value addition. Now, according to Niti Aayog's National Multidimensional Index, around 13.5 crore people exited poverty in India. India has improved in all of the 12 parameters of dimensions that we have seen earlier, right? And it is actually, India as a country is actually on a track to achieve the goal 1.2 of the SDG. So this is a very good news. And the fastest decline is actually from the rural areas, if we can consider. See, it has been around 50% reduction, not 50% exactly, but 40 to 50% range that we have actually reduced our poverty, right? Then the reduction in incidence of urban areas has been around 3%, right? So we can see the rural areas have actually improved on this particular aspect. The intensity of poverty has again reduced in India, which is a good thing. So all this data which I am mentioning is very important for your mains. So please do capture this information in your class notes or in whatever form your notes are actually made. And finally, states like UP, Bihar, Madhya Pradesh, Odisha, Rajasthan, which are actually having a large number of multidimensionally poor population, they again have showed huge improvements. So these are good case studies that these states are actually progressing, because historically these states were actually the states where poverty is found in huge numbers. So if we compare the poverty rates, Bihar is actually having the most number of multidimensionally poor people, but it is a good thing that from the last report it has actually improved, followed by Jharkhand, Meghalaya, Uttar Pradesh and Madhya Pradesh. Okay, now according to this report, or according to this index which is published by the Niti Aayog, it is stated in the report itself, let me tell you, that there have been various schemes. So Niti Aayog has itself quoted, and also the economic survey of 2023 of India, it also states that India has managed to reduce its MP, or multidimensionally poor people, through various schemes. The first scheme with respect to education will be Samagra Shiksha, which is doing a fantastic job in increasing the gross enrollment ratio and also increasing the reach of education to all of the population. Then with respect to health, the Poshan Abhiyan and the Anemia Mukt Bharat is a very important scheme. These are actually leading to improvements in maternal health and also reducing the child mortality at large. Nutrition with respect to Poshan Abhiyan is when we are combining this with our public distribution system or our ration system, this is again reaping multiple rewards. Sanitation schemes like Swachh Bharat Mission, Jal Jeevan Mission is actually making the drinking water more portable for the poor people. We are providing tap water connections, and this is actually showing a good impact on the MPI index. Next, the subsidized cooking fuel through Pradhan Mantri Ujjwala Yojana. The housing schemes like Pradhan Mantri Awas Yojana, which is bringing in affordable housing, particularly for the poor people and for the women at large. So these schemes are actually helping. Then electricity under the Saubhagya or Pradhan Mantri Sahaj Bijli Har Ghar Yojana, which is providing electrification specifically in the rural areas. This is again helping India to reduce its MPI. And with respect to assets, we have the famous Pradhan Mantri Jan Dhan Yojana, which was started in 2016 to actually bring in more people to the financial fold of India. So we have seen that through the schemes, India has actually tried to reduce the scope of MPI. And with respect to various states, we can see that these states are still having a large amount of MPI, poor people. But this is actually on a declining trend. Whereas we can see the rest of the India, they're also following a similar trend. Now, the concluding thoughts here will be that MPI or Multidimensional Poverty Index, which is published by both the UNDP and OPHI, and in our case in India by the Niti Aayog, is having a policy significance, because the policymakers or the government at large, the state governments at large, can study this index and actually can go for target-based intervention. Then we can have a good and healthy picture of the poverty at large at India level, at state level, and at a district level. This will again help in policy formulation and also in achievement of our sustainable development goals. But we have several challenges, as it is apparent that there are still states which are still having a large amount of people as multidimensionally poor. So there must be proper challenges addressal mechanisms, right? Specifically, the challenges are through regional imbalances, because some of the states are still lagging behind than the rest of the states. There is a huge prevalence of inequality. According to the Oxfam report, the top 1% of India, or the top 1% richest of Indians, hold 73% of wealth. So this is a hugely, unequal distribution of wealth. Then the vicious cycle of poverty is being seen in the case of marginalized sections, the vulnerable sections such as the tribals, where one generation actually perpetuates the poverty level across all of the generations, and this leads to further poverty, especially in the case of women, right? This also takes a serious turn. And finally, there are areas which are still reeling under conflict, such as India's northeast, such as in recent case the Manipur. So the Manipur state is still seeing conflicts, and it is the local people, who suffer the most. So we must be addressing these challenges, and particularly a very important approach comes to my mind when I talk about poverty. It is the capability of approach by Amartya Sen. Amartya Sen targeted the state or the nation at large, the government at large. That government is actually responsible for building the capabilities of the individuals who can later then elevate the nation to a prosperous level. So let us bring the capabilities. Capabilities will be in the form of education, health, or in the various dimensions we just discussed. So capability approach is a very crucial matter when we discuss poverty, and this should be the targeted intervention by the government at large. Okay. Now with this, let us go to the next article. This is with respect to the BIMSTEC meeting that took place between the foreign ministers of the participating nations. Now this is important. Why? Because GS2 contains regional and global groupings that affects Indian interest. And specifically in 2022, the last year's mains, we had a question that, do you think the BIMSTEC is a parallel organization like the SAARC? What are the similarities and dissimilarities between the two? And how can Indian foreign policy objectives realized by forming this new organization? So this has been a regional grouping that is known as the Bay of Bengal Initiative for Multi-Sectoral Technical and Economic Cooperation. Now why this grouping has been formed at all? Let us go through the background. So here, initially at Thailand, this grouping was formed at June 6, 1997. So this was actually formed, away from India in Thailand. But the thing is that the founding members were Bangladesh, India, Sri Lanka and Thailand. So initially there were only 4 countries. And later, Nepal associated with BIMSTEC as an observer state in 1998 and became a full member in 2004 along with Bhutan. And the permanent secretariat is at Dhaka, right? Now the thing is that why this grouping is needed at all? If we can see on the map here, we have countries like India, Nepal, Sri Lanka, Bangladesh, Bhutan, Myanmar, Thailand. These are all regional partners. And if we can see, China is not one of those members. Pakistan is not one of the members, despite they being in this area of South Asian and Southeast Asian region. Now the objectives we have to see that these countries are like-minded democratic nations who have a proper objective of growth and social progress in mind. Right? The aims will be to accelerate regional growth in this particular nation. Specifically, they are focusing on Bay of Bengal. Bay of Bengal they are focusing on for their regional growth and also for the mutual cooperation in various areas, the economic areas, political areas, and they will be utilizing their regional resources and separate comparative advantages of different nations for their own advantages. So the aims and objectives is to use the Bay of Bengal as a leverage between these various nations. And why is this BIMSTEC organization very important? Because this area is constituting around 22% of the world's population, or around 1.73 billion people. So a large amount of stakeholders are involved in this particular region. The combined GDP is close to around $2.3 trillion. Then the average GDP growth is around 3.4 to 7.4%. This is with respect to the various members of this BIMSTEC. And also the Bay of Bengal in world trade is actually around 25%. So we can assume the significance of this particular region, right? So this is a very active region and they have 14 priority areas of cooperation. The 14 priority areas can be seen here, and India particularly have their sectors such as transportation communication, tourism, environment disaster management, counter-terrorism and transnational crime. So if we were to address this question, we'll be having these dimensions in mind before writing any particular answer. So this is a very brief discussion of BIMSTEC. Now, BIMSTEC as a regional forum has various significance of its own. But the thing is that till 2016, just before the Uri attacks, just before the Uri terrorism attacks, this region or regional grouping was largely defunct or largely ignored. Now, when these attacks took place in 2016, India tried to diversify, or say, India wanted to totally break away from Pakistan in all diplomatic forums. That's why India severed itself from the SAARC, at least at a philosophical level. Then, from 2016 onwards, at the Goa summit of BIMSTEC, India invited the BIMSTEC members for a summit. And from there on, from 2016, these grouping become very significant. Now, discussing the individual significance of various nations. First, let us start for India. Now, it is very significant for India because BIMSTEC serves as an alternative for SAARC. SAARC had countries like Nepal, Bhutan, Pakistan, India, Bangladesh, these countries as its organization. But right now, if Pakistan did not play the rules of the game properly or fairly in a transparent manner, India has to look for alternative partners at large. So, BIMSTEC is a very good opportunity for India if it wants to decouple from Pakistan diplomatically. So, it is giving an alternative to SAARC. Then, an open and peaceful Indo-Pacific beyond the Bay of Bengal is a larger imperative of India. Specifically, if it wants to counter China, who is becoming very present in this particular region. So, India will be needing some of the partners at large, and that's why, as a part of its larger Indo-Pacific vision, India sees BIMSTEC as a prominent role to play. Then, India has a mission known as Sagarmala. Now, this Sagarmala mission is, is an integration of the major and minor ports and also some coastal economic zones around the entire coast of India. This will be part of both Arabian Sea coast and the Bay of Bengal coast. And BIMSTEC will be integrating various countries through sea routes, right? So, BIMSTEC will be playing a very significant role in the development and the conceptualization and the realization of the goals of Sagarmala project. So, India definitely wants to continue with this cooperation. Next, India will be providing also regional leadership to countries such as Bhutan, Nepal, Bangladesh, who do not have the capabilities of their own to develop their economic trade at large. Even countries like Bhutan and Nepal, they are landlocked nations. So, they will be reliant on India to provide proper amount of leadership to them. Then finally, for India, the northeast is largely still underdeveloped. If we can link the northeast with the rest of the Southeast Asia, so it will be leading to development of the northeast region at large. It will be meeting the aspirations of our Act East policy, which specifically links the India with the Southeastern nations through the northeast. So let BIMSTEC be that leverage at large. The significance for the rest of the countries in these groupings will be specifically for Bangladesh, because Bangladesh will be looking to exploit its coastal regions and also be looking to integrate the Indian shipments of vessels with the Myanmar shipments of vessels, and also we have Indonesia further down the line, we have further the rest of the Indo-Pacific, and Bangladesh have aspirations to become a developed country like us. So they are also looking to diversify through this particular grouping. Sri Lanka has been facing a huge amount of economic crisis, and it is imperative for them to actually have friendly relations with all of the countries. And also Sri Lanka sees this grouping as a very strategic location in the Bay of Bengal. Nepal and Myanmar are essentially landlocked countries, and these two countries are heavily dependent on India for several of their requirements. So they will be having their own interest. Myanmar and Thailand are right now facing the Chinese influence. This will be via funding of various projects. This will be via China being physically present in their particular waters and regions. So Myanmar and Thailand, if they are including India as their partners, Bangladesh as their partners, they will be getting in access to additional markets, because these are also aspiring nations and developing countries. They will be trying to diversify our economic cooperation, technological cooperations. So it is again significant for them to be a holistic part of this grouping. Now the way ahead will be for the grouping as a large, since we all share the Bay of Bengal waters and also the extended region of Indo-Pacific, we must be stopping the military presence of China in this region, because by and now China transgates into this region through their private and government vessels at large. So we must be stopping the extent of presence of China. We must be recognizing the underpinnings, such as our cultural underpinnings. We have to be very cognizant of the fact that we have a shared historical background. Then we must also be trying to finally deepen our relations through this particular organization, because BIMSTEC will be providing various opportunities for the people of the country, for the leadership of the country, for the foreign ministers, various agencies, stakeholders will be coming together in this particular region to essentially take the relationship to the next level. So it is to be seen what are the final outcomes of the BIMSTEC, but let us keep this in mind that India will be playing a very prominent role in this particular organization through its leadership and also various other initiatives. Okay, now the next article is a very interesting one, because we have just now completed 1 anniversary of the James Webb Space Telescope. Hereupon I will be just calling it as the Webb. The Webb actually published its first image almost 1 year ago, and let me tell you, these images are fantastic, and these images, if you look at them closely, you will be keeping pondering at them for hours and hours. These are such beautiful and clear images of our universe that it will be helping you to see the universe in a totally new-found way. Now this article came because on the first anniversary, James Webb Space Telescope captured the Rho Ophiuchi Nebula. Now these nebulas are what? These are the birth grounds of stars, because nebulas are essentially star dust. If you can see the picture in the background, this is a particular nebula. These are containing dense material of stars fragmented around each other. And when this material come together under the influence of gravity, they coalesce to a single point under gravity and keep revolving against each other. And finally, they form a clump which is known as stars. So this is a very simple explanation of the formation of stars, and it is through the Webb we are actually seeing the live formation of stars, right? And we can understand that how can we see such beautiful phenomena, right? This is through the phenomena of light. Just because light from these particular places are coming to the James Webb and from the James Webb to us, that is the reason why we can observe such phenomena at large. So this James Webb was very significant in the year 2020, so significant that they actually asked a question on this. The question is that launched on 25th December 2021, James Webb Space Telescope has been much in the news since then. What are these unique features which make it superior to this predecessor telescopes such as the Hubble Space Telescope? What are the key goals of this mission and what are the potential benefits it hold for the human race at large? Now let me discuss this. James Webb Space Telescope actually looks like this. It is an arrangement of various sensitive instruments which will be capturing the light from the Big Bang. Now, when there was a Big Bang, before that there was nothing according to theoretical physicists. Before the Big Bang there was nothing, and after the Big Bang there was everything. We know that since the formation of the Big Bang, the first radiation that came to the fore was the microwave radiation. Subsequently, after the microwave radiation came the infrared radiation. Now, infrared radiation was actually in the range of around 300 to around 800 million years after the Big Bang. Right? Now let us imagine this figure. Now let us imagine this is the Big Bang. So following at around 800 million light years after the Big Bang, there was the emergence of infrared radiation. And it is this infrared radiation that the James Webb Space Telescope is trying to detect, and that is why it is being told that our Webb is trying to peer into the depths of our past to gather that amount of evidence that emerged just after the Big Bang. So it can be the early formation of stars, the young stars, the youngest galaxies. So through this powerful telescope, we can understand the nature of origin of our universe at large. Now, the instruments are very sensitive in James Webb Space Telescope. We have around many mirrors in the arrangement of the Webb, which are actually made of beryllium and gold, that actually makes it much more reflective. Such reflective that it is almost 5 times as capable as the Hubble telescope, which is around 1 lakh more times sensitive than our own human eyes. So you can imagine the accuracy of this Webb, such that a famous scientist once commented that the space telescope of Webb, the James Webb Space Telescope, can detect the heat image of a bumblebee from the Earth to the surface of the moon. So a bumblebee can be seen from the James Webb Telescope. It is so sensitive. And how it is so sensitive? Because it has various sophisticated special instruments, and it is essentially the instruments, the scientific instruments are actually shielded from the surface of the Earth, because for the proper functioning of these instruments, we need the temperature to be around sub-zero. Right? That is why there have been various layers of technology, various layers of foils before the instruments. It helps us to properly look at the various things in universe, and no heat is actually tolerated while we are actually detecting the space at large. Right? These instruments are so sensitive that they cannot tolerate heat. That is why we have reflective coatings from the sun. Now, this project is actually the collaboration between NASA, the European Space Agency, and the Canadian Space Agency. Right? It has recently discovered the Rho Ophiuchi cloud complex, which is a dense sense of nebula, and this is located around 400 million light years away in our own Milky Way galaxy. When we compare it to the Hubble Space Telescope, which is by far the most advanced telescope after the Webb, if we compare with respect to the wavelength, the Hubble telescope operates in the optical wavelength or our visible wavelength, and the space telescope, the Webb Space Telescope, actually operates in both the optical range and the infrared range. Because just after the Big Bang, it is the infrared that we can actually observe. When it comes to the size, Webb is around 6.5 meters and Hubble is around 2.4. So we can imagine that the Webb is actually around 3 stories building long, and it can contain various scientific instruments which is actually helping us determine these images at large. The orbit is actually around this particular region, where the Hubble is actually orbiting the Earth at around 600 kilometers from the Earth's atmosphere. The Webb is actually located further away from the Earth in the Sun's L2 orbit or Lagrange 2 orbit. So this is a place where the James Webb will be particularly fixed or located, and this will be also revolving around the Sun at large, right? Okay, then with respect to the sensitive tools, as I've already discussed, that the James Webb is having so sensitive tools that it essentially has to be protected from the radiation of the Sun, right? But the Webb, the Hubble Space Telescope do not have such a sensitive amount of tools. This is far more superior. The key goals of this mission of this James Webb Space Telescope is that we must be getting close to the Big Bang to actually know the origin of our universe. So it is to be looking at the depths of our universe at large. Then we are looking also at the baby stars and the galaxies which have been formed just after the Big Bang. We are actually improve upon our own basic understanding. Our understanding right now is limited to the images that has been provided by Hubble, right? So we have to improve our understanding, and that is why the Webb has been actually conceptualized and launched into space. Further, research and scientific collaboration in this astrophysics field is very important to actually know the secrets of our universe, the secrets of our origin. And towards this, the Webb has been playing a very important role because this is totally altering our understanding. Some of the instances let me give you. For the very first instance, it is giving us very sharper images of our universe. So all kind of images that were earlier looked at by the Hubble, we are actually getting more sharper images. Then we are also looking at abnormal early galaxies such as this picture. We can see the instance of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 galaxies which must not actually exist just after the Big Bang. So this is an image which has been roughly dated back to around 800 million years just after formation of Big Bang. Accordingly, at around this time, stars must be there but not galaxies. The James Webb found proper galaxies during this period of time. So this is a mystery. According to our standard model, these galaxies must not be there, stars can be normal. So there are some abnormal galaxies that need our further interpretation, further studies that can totally unsettle the field of physics. They are also detecting primordial black holes, or primordial means old, ancient. So ancient black holes just after the formation of Big Bang is again unnatural. So again, this is altering our understanding of the universe, that black holes could have been present after the Big Bang, just after the formation of Big Bang. Then there is this particular exoplanet known as the WASP 96b, who is actually near to a very big star and whose atmosphere is also very hot. It is also nicknamed as the hot Jupiter. Now this is a planet located far away from the Earth, but actually we can find liquid water there according to the observation of the James Webb. This is highly unusual because the star is massive and very heated, and also the planet is also heated. So how can we find liquid water there? So again a mystery. The various proportion of space and time via detection of black holes is again being altered because through the web we are observing new images of the black holes, which are altering our understanding of the space and time and Einstein's general theory of relativity. And finally, human curiosity knows no bounds, right? So we must be keeping on exploring, and we must be challenging our existing sets of understanding at large. Okay, now the next article is with respect to the tragic incident that are following in the news today. This is relating to the deaths of cheetahs in India, and this is very important from our syllabus point of view, where in the prelims we have general issues on environment and ecology, and in GS3 we have topics such as conservation. And this is in context that the cheetahs which have been bought from Namibia and South Africa, around 20 numbers were bought, and out of them around 8 have died. Out of 8, 3 were around small cubs. So this is a very tragic incident that we were trying to promote the cheetah population in India, but we are facing some setbacks. So before going into those details, let us understand some of the brief details that can be coming useful in our UPSC prelims. The cheetah is, by far, you already must be knowing that it is the fastest land animal. It is the fastest land animal, clocking speeds around 128 km per hour. So we can imagine, right? And their stride, or the distance between their hind leg and when they run and when they land on their front legs, it is around 21 feet. So you can imagine, they kind of jump and run. That is why they are the fastest land animal. Their average length is around 40 to 60 inches, right? And adults' weight is around 21 to 76 kg. Now, why I am discussing all this? Because right now UPSC has been asking some interesting facets of some of the most exclusive species of our world. So cheetah is a very exclusive species. So let us discuss this amount of details. And when we come to the conservation status, they are falling into the vulnerable section of the IUCN status. In India, we translocated cheetahs at the Kuno National Park at Madhya Pradesh, where we can see the map here. We have the Kuno Palpur area with the Nauradehi area, Shahgarh, where these are the 3 potential wildlife sanctuaries and national parks which are shortlisted, and the cheetahs are actually at the Kuno Palpur area, right? And a key term from the article is BOMAS, which means this is 1 square kilometer enclosed area for the conservation of cheetah, because just after bringing them from South Africa and Namibia, we are keeping them enclosed in a BOMAS. Why? Because we are letting them to acclimatize to Indian conditions. But there have been some issues with the present batch of cheetahs because most of them are perishing in the Indian climate and Indian conditions. The most foremost allegation as of now that is coming out from different circles is a case of collar infection. As we have seen in the previous picture, that there was a prominent collar around the cheetah's neck, and it is said that due to various infections and local parasites, maybe the cheetahs are not actually acclimatized to this or say immune to these parasites. So there have been several instances of maggots and parasites being found. So this is a reason. The biggest reason is because they are yet to acclimatize. They are going through a stress that can be mental, emotional, psychological stress that the cheetahs are facing. So this is a reason. A particular cheetah actually came in conflict with local land animals there. Especially the biggest threats are the leopards population there. And one cheetah actually died in the conflict with a local animal. This is a very serious concern. Then the space at the Kuno National Park is actually not enough for 20 cheetahs. The prey populations are not enough to sustain their population. And finally, the cubs who actually died because they were facing intense heat and malnutrition issues in this national park. So these are the issues that we need to highlight. And also there are some ethical concerns of this translocation of animals. So these are some issues that the Indian authorities must be highlighting, and that is why a special investigation has been ordered for the same. Now the last article is about the new norms with respect to the appointment of designation of senior advocates in India, because Supreme Court has laid out some guidelines in this respect. Now actually, who are senior advocates? These are highly specialized individuals who have proper amount of skills in the field of law. They are legal experts in their own domain, and they are very crucial for the overall legal machinery of India. Now, according to Section 16 of the Advocates Act, there are two types of advocates, senior and junior, right? Now, again, according to Section 16 subclause 2 of the Advocates Act of 1961 and Rules 2A of Order 4 of Supreme Court Rules 1966, the appointment of, or say the designation of senior advocates must be done by the Chief Justice and other judges of the concerned court. This court can be High Court or Supreme Court. So these people will be designating them, and the qualification is that they must be of exceptional order in field of legal expertise and knowledge of the law. And also the advocate who is actually designated as a senior advocate, their permission or prior consent must also be taken. Right. Now, what are the restrictions on them? The restrictions are that they cannot appear without advocate on record, or essentially they're juniors in the laws. Then no drafting pleadings or affidavits can be filed by them, because these are daily or routine legal works. They are experts in their domain. Will they be pressurized, or say will they be considering small activities like filing affidavits and pleadings? No, this will be taken care by the juniors at large. They will be focusing on legal matters and rule of law and matters of legal importance. Now, designation of senior advocates had been a controversial issue, particularly highlighted by another senior advocate, Indira Jaising. She actually told, or she actually had this objection that women or marginalized communities who are trying or who are aspiring to be designated as senior advocates, they are facing discrimination, because that system, the previous system, was actually that two senior advocates need to recommend your name, and there will be a Supreme Court committee who will be considering the same. Now there was, according to the petitioner, there was a bias that was prevailing between the two senior advocates. So that is why in the aftermath of Indira Jaising case of 2017, the committee for designation of senior advocates was formed by the Supreme Court, and the permanent secretariat was also formed. Now in this committee, what was actually done is that two Supreme Court judges, Attorney General of India, and a member from the bar will be considering the people or the advocates who will be designated as the senior advocate. Now, the permanent secretariat will be additionally tasked with looking at the profiles of the applications of senior advocate. They will be looking at years of practice, pro bono work, judgments, publications, and a personality test, just like you will be appearing for your UPSC interviews. So senior advocates also have to go through this proper formal institutions. Now, this was in 2017, according to 2017 case. Now in 2023, Center sought to change these rules, because the Center thought that these rules are not enough to actually be more inclusive to all. Then Supreme Court came with their new guidelines most recently. These altered the rules to make the minimum age as 45 years to anyone who has been designated as senior advocate. Now this is flexible, and this will be determined the committee of Supreme Court judges. Now the earlier composition, which are two Supreme Court judges, Advocate General of India, and a member from the bar, this was extended, or this was properly designated as the CJI. The Chief Justice of India will have to be there in the committee along with any judge. So now no longer two Supreme Court judges, now there will be CJI plus one SC judge. And additionally there will be Advocate General of India and a member from the bar, who will be giving in writing the recommendation. And finally, the assessment mark has been changed with respect to publication guest lectures that the person has to be making, reported and unreported judgments. So these were the changes that were made. So this was all for today. All the current affairs which are very important for your examinations. I thank you all for your patience. Best of luck for all your studies. Till we meet again. Thank you.